That night, the night I made the final deal, I couldn't sleep. I just sat there in the quiet of my new house, the numbers on the screen glowing in the dark, my bank account finally ticking over 7 figures, $1 million. It was a number I chased for half my life, the finish line to a race I was convinced I was born to win. 50 years old, and I'd done it. I had the money, the house, the empty silence. It was all mine. The silence was the part I hadn't prepared for. I had always imagined this moment being a celebration, a triumph with my family. But my wife, Sarah, and our 2 kids, Ethan and Emily, they weren't there. They were gone. The pursuit of that single number, that obsession, it had chipped away at everything else until there was nothing left. I had convinced myself that this was all for them, that the long nights and missed birthdays and canceled bike rides were an investment in a better future for all of us. I told myself that once I reached the goal, everything would go back to normal, only better. I was wrong. It wasn't a single event that broke us. It was a slow decay, a creeping cold that settled in the bones of our family. I remember the day Ethan stopped asking me to play catch, the day Emily stopped leaving her drawings on my desk. They learned not to expect me. Sarah, she held on the longest. The arguments, they weren't loud or angry. They were quiet, filled with a kind of resignation that cut deeper than any scream. "David, we don't need $1 million. We need you," she said to me one night, her voice barely a whisper. I just told her she didn't understand that this was for our freedom. I thought I was making a sacrifice, but I was sacrificing them. And now, sitting there in the echoing quiet of my triumph, with the bank account at $1 million and the house full of expensive emptiness, I wondered if I was the only one who didn't see what was coming. I wondered if I was the only one who didn't see I had already lost. It's a strange thing to have everything you ever wanted and feel completely nothing. The month that followed was a blur of silence and meaningless acquisitions. I bought a new bike, one of those sleek carbon fiber models I'd always dreamed of. I rode it through the empty streets, the wind a cold slap against my face, the landscape a constant gray reflection of my own internal state. The joy I had always associated with the sport, the sense of freedom and simple pleasure, was gone. It was just a machine, and I was just a man, riding nowhere. My friends, they faded away too. They didn't vanish in a flash of anger. They just stopped calling. I had canceled on them so many times, missed so many group rides and weekend meetups, always with some excuse about a big deal or a critical meeting. They stopped inviting me. I saw pictures on social media, them laughing, covered in mud, beers in hand after a long ride. I feel a hollow ache in my chest, a phantom limb of a life I had amputated myself. I would tell myself it didn't matter, that they just didn't understand the level I was playing on now. But I knew the truth. They understood more than I did. They understood what was truly valuable. The worst part was checking my phone every morning. Not for calls or texts, but for something else. I had this insane, desperate hope that Sarah would text me. Just a simple "how are you?" or "the kids miss you." But the screen was always blank. I considered reaching out, typing out a long apology or promise to change, but my fingers would freeze over the keyboard. What could I even say? Sorry I traded our happiness for a number on a screen? The words felt cheap and empty, just like everything else. I'd lay awake at night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment that led to this. The look on Emily's face when I missed her dance recital. The way Ethan's shoulders slumped when I told him I couldn't coach his team anymore. They learned not to expect me. Sarah, she held on the longest. The arguments, they weren't loud or angry. They were quiet, filled with a kind of resignation that cut deeper than any scream. "David, we don't need $1 million. We need you," she said to me one night, her voice barely a whisper. I just told her she didn't understand, that this was for our freedom. I thought I was making a sacrifice, but I was sacrificing them. And now, sitting there in the echoing quiet of my triumph with the bank account at 1 million and the house full of expensive emptiness, I wondered if I was the only one who didn't see what was coming. I wondered if I was the only one who didn't see I had already lost. And then the phone rang. It was the call I had been dreading and longing for. It was Sarah. Her voice was strained, distant, but I could hear a kind of urgent panic underneath it. "David, it's about Ethan. Something's happened." "What happened?" The question came out as a strangled gasp, a sound I hadn't heard from myself in months. Sarah's voice was a tight wire. "He was at a friend's house. There was an accident. He fell. He's at the hospital, David. He's asking for you." The world seemed to spin on its axis. The new house, the $1 million, the silent emptiness, all of it collapsed into nothing. I drove to the hospital in a blind panic, breaking every speed limit. The bike in the back of my car now felt like a monument to my own self-absorption. I found them in a waiting room, a sterile, cold space. Sarah looked at me, her eyes red and swollen, and for the first time, she didn't seem angry, just exhausted. Emily sat beside her, small and fragile, clutching a worn-out teddy bear. When I walked into Ethan's room, my breath caught in my throat. He lay in the bed, pale and still, his arm in a cast. The doctor explained it was a serious fracture, that he'd need surgery, that it'd be a long recovery. None of it registered. All I could see was his face, the way his eyes lit up when he saw me. He didn't ask about the money or the new house. He just smiled, a weak, tired smile, and whispered, "Dad, you came." That moment, the raw, unfiltered relief on his face, it was worth more than all the money I had. The following weeks were a blur of hospital visits and physical therapy. I canceled the meetings, ignored the calls, and just showed up. I sat by his bed, told him stories, and watched TV with him. I brought him his favorite snacks and helped him with his schoolwork. I wasn't a man chasing a number anymore. I was just a dad, and it was the most real I had felt in years. On the last day of the month, the day he was finally able to come home, I was standing in his room looking at the faded bike posters on his wall. I thought about the first time I taught him to ride, the way his small hands gripped the handlebars, the nervous excitement in his voice. I had lost so much of that, but now, as he walked slowly into the room, leaning on his crutches, he looked at me, and I saw something different in his eyes. Not resentment, not anger, but a kind of hesitant hope. I had the money, I had the $1 million, but sitting there watching my son finally back in his own bed, a simple truth settled over me with a quiet weight. The money was just a number. It couldn't buy back the years I had lost. It couldn't fix the broken trust or the silent distance. The question I faced wasn't whether the money was worth it. It was what I would do with it now. Would I use it to try to rebuild what I had destroyed? Or was it just a cold, hollow prize, a permanent reminder of the life I had chosen to abandon? The silence was gone, replaced by the low hum of the city outside and the rhythmic breathing of my son. And in that moment I knew I was 50, I had everything, and I had nothing.